All right, ready?
There he goes.
All right.
Every time.
Welcome to Equity or Bust, where real estate meets investing and wealth gets built. My name is Young. I own multiple real estate businesses in and around the greater Boston area, and I'm hoping that this podcast helps you build wealth as well. With me is my co-host.
I'm Leo, contractor, real estate investor, and hands-on builder.
Today, we have a very special guest, a local developer here in Boston. Fun fact with him is he has a beautiful voice and used to be a choir boy. Without further ado, Anthony Fava.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm Anthony Fava. I'm with Sun Property Group. We are a real estate company that is really in all facets of real estate, brokerage services, property management, and development.
Okay, awesome. So, Anthony, tell us a little bit about some of the past projects you've worked on then.
Yeah, definitely. I think like a lot of folks in real estate and development, it started off very small for us. We were just doing like quick flips, renovation projects. At the time, doing some foreclosure purchases and then flipping those. Got into more full-scale renovations, gut rehabs, more extensive rehabs, and then eventually transitioned into new construction. So that's really how it kind of started, and all through the years, the projects just got more complex depending on location, site conditions, and things like that. And we learned a lot along the way.
What do you think the most complex project you ever finished up was then?
Yeah, so it wasn't overall that bad, but it was just a project we learned so much on. We bought a 2-family in South Boston that we permitted into 4 units, and it was a really narrow site, and we had driveway on one side, a building on the other side, another residence, and the whole site was built on fill. And as we got through the project, the designers, our structural engineer, said, "Hey, you really need a geotechnical engineer to, look at your soil conditions, figure out, can we just bear a concrete spread footing on this, or do we need something more advanced?" And that's when we engaged for the first time, a geotechnical engineer to really assess something for one of our projects. And we found that we had like 20 feet of fill. We had to do deep helical piles, which was like the most cost-effective solution. And, once we got through that, we had a very aggressive design, a huge cantilevered building, which required a ton of steel. So we learned a lot about steel design there and how it impacts the budget. And finally, once we got into construction, we realized that we had all of these other aspects of the site that we had to hold up when we were digging a 10-foot deep hole in the ground, right up next to a sidewalk, right up next to a driveway for a neighboring property, and we had to get into shoring. So we learned the long and hard way about advanced support systems for foundations, steel design, and earth support systems all in one project. So it definitely, like, over time, it hasn't been our most complex project, but it was one early on that really gave us so much knowledge on how to navigate these different terrain-like situations.
So how did you, tell me a little bit about how you first got into real estate development in general then, like.
Sure. Yeah. So I went to Northeastern. I majored in civil engineering, and, I was always drawn to just construction and that sort of aspect of engineering. So I ended up becoming a land design engineer. So I worked with and for developers pretty frequently. And they always intrigued me on with how they had this like vision to, they had a site or some area they were trying to design, and they had an idea on how they wanted it to look like and how they wanted to finish it off. So I really liked that. And I me as a civil engineer working on their projects, designing the site and the utilities, it was nice. But I was just kind of like a cog in the whole overall system that they were kind of controlling. And I like that aspect of those developers where they were kind of at the top of the food chain, and I felt like that would probably be the best place for me if I wanted to be in real estate, and real estate development. So, over time, I tried to figure out ways to like kind of make my path into development. I stayed as a civil engineer for many, many years, and started doing some of those flips and renovations, and eventually got to the point where I could form a partnership, and then with Sun Property Group, and try to explore larger development possibilities other than just little flips and renovations.
Okay. Walk us through like a typical process on, say you find a property, and what do you do to determine this project's going to be this project, and what's the process for a project approval?
Sure. Yeah, every municipality is different. Boston, Cambridge, Somerville are some of the areas we've worked in the most, and they all have their complexities, but Boston's probably the trickiest one, just because you have to navigate the whole neighborhood process, for zoning, ZBA approvals and things like that. There's no project in Boston that's as of right. So it's a tough, arduous process, but really when we are presented with a site that is potentially developable, I'll jump into AutoCAD, I'll start sketching some things out and see, like, can we fit some parking? What does some setbacks look like? What's the massing look like? So what can we end up with for sellable square footage? And from there, we can kind of derive a pro forma based on that. And, if the numbers look good and we can come to terms with the seller, then, the next step is really to do, the site survey, start putting together some schematic designs with the architect, and then present those to the neighborhood groups and try to, win them over and see if they'll allow us to build, what we wanted to build. So the last project that we did in Boston was in South Boston. We did 142 P Street. It was 5 townhouses. It actually started out as maybe a 9-unit building. And we had a structure with the seller there where we would basically, we would pay a certain price if we got 9 units approved. And then it would scale back all the way to like 4 units. Mm-hmm. And, we would just pay a lesser and lesser price depending on how many units got knocked off. It's just like how it would be done in the deep suburbs where, you have just huge tracts of land and people will say, well, I'll pay, 10,000 per unit or 5,000 per unit. We'll see how many units we get approved. Right. So, ultimately we came away with 5 townhouses there, and it was a pretty long neighborhood process. And part of that process was me going into one of the abutters' homes and standing on his second floor and looking out, and him telling me, I'm going to lose this entire view of Castle Island if you build what you're going to build. And I said, all right, well, let me see what we can do and to try to save your view and see if we can also come up with a project that still works for us. And we came back with a drawing that kind of pulled the front of the building back a little bit. It really saved almost all of his vantage point to Castle Island. And he basically got up at the ZBA hearing and said, these guys were great. They made some major revisions to the plans, and I fully support their project as it's designed now. And that really kind of sealed the deal on that one. So, and then once you have the ZBA approval, then you still have to get through the appeal period, which we've been appealed many, many times. So don't think that you're going to get by unscathed on this if you're doing it enough. But if you can get through that, then eventually you'll be able to finish the rest of your construction drawings and file a building permit and then get on your way. But it's a very, very long process in Boston. Somerville, a little bit easier. Cambridge has gotten a little easier with their revised zoning. They came up with a new code last year where there's a lot more ability to do as of right projects. So, so it really depends on where you are, but that's kind of the process that we usually go through.
So, like, we've done some small projects ourselves, mm-hmm. and our timeline, I think what is our average project is about 5 months, I would say.
Something like that.
Yeah, right around 5 months.
5 or 6 months.
From the time we buy it to the moment we sell it, it's like 5 or 6 months typically. So, I mean, obviously, they're a fraction of the time for these larger projects. Like, what time frame from the time that you start talking to the potential seller to the time that you sell your first unit? What do you think that time frame is?
Oh, it's years.
Years?
It's years, yeah. Years. I mean, first of all, especially if you're trying to source like an off-market deal, a lot of these sellers, they just they don't even know if they really want to sell yet, and they're always looking for a better deal, So it almost, a lot of times, most of our deals, a lot of our deals, I should say, are ones that were on the market. It was a seller that was committed to selling, and we were able to just come up with a creative solution that we were able to align our goals with their goals, and we could strike a deal. But from that point, once you have the purchase and sale signed up and you're ready to move to the next step, which is, your due diligence, your survey, your architectural schematics, in Boston, you could be spending at least a year to get through that zoning process, which is insane. It will take, it's going to take a few weeks to a month or so just to get your plans put together. And you got to submit that to ISD. You have to get that plan set rejected. It usually takes a month, maybe more. Once that gets rejected, you have your letter that you can then send or take to ZBA and say, hey, we want to present this to the zoning board. At the same time, you go to whatever neighborhood group you're in. And in South Boston, there's probably like 6 sub-neighborhood groups like Andrew Square, City Point, and so on. And you'll present your plans to them, work through that process with them. And then, once they kind of bless it, you move on to the next step, which is the ZBA hearing. And like I said, there's an appeal period of like 20 whatever days. So it's a long process. And, I think on average, it probably took us about a year. I don't think it's ever really taken much less than that.
What's the longest that it's taken you?
I would say it maybe a year and a half, somewhere in that range.
In Boston?
Yeah, in Boston. I had a buddy of mine from Northeastern that I was kind of guiding him on the process. He had a vacant piece of land next to his triple decker, and he could fit, I said, why don't you go for 7 units? He started with 7 units. He met with the neighborhood group. It got scaled back to like 5 units. He ended up with 5. But I think he took about a year and a half to get through that entire process. And this was in like Codman Square, which is an area where, it's not as, you wouldn't think it's as hotly contested as, say, like South Boston. Southie's really, really tough to work in. So, but yeah, he probably had, maybe 1 or 2 abutters meetings, probably at least 2 Codman Square meetings. And then he had to go to ZBA. But getting through that entire process, I think it took him about a year and a half.
So once you get the approval, how long do you think it would, say that, for example, the 5-unit townhouse, what's the construction time, do you think, on that?
Yeah, so the construction time on that was about 2 years.
Okay.
It was a tough build. We were going lot line to lot line on 3 sides. We had to install shoring on 3 sides of the excavation. It went down probably about 12 to 14 feet. There was a ton of dirt that had to get taken out of there. It just took forever. And then we had some other complexities to the design. You can certainly look this up on MLS and see some of the photos, but we had 5 townhouses kind of in a row. And then we had a driveway in the front, but at basement level. And it was right in front. And so instead of having this, like, you walk out your front door of the townhouse and there's a big drop down to this like basement level driveway, we put these like concrete planks in to basically kind of bridge over. So that was, a complex design detail that we added in. And then a lot of the finishes were really, really intricate. We did custom roof hatches, skylight roof hatches that open automatically, really custom cabinetry. The MEP designs were really, really tough, because it was a tight, all the units were very tightly packed with a lot of detail to them. So yeah, it was about a 2-year build on that. The good thing with that project was that by the time we got the certificate of occupancy, we had every unit under contract to sell. So once we had the C of O, within a couple of weeks, we sold every unit and we moved on.
And if you don't mind me asking, if you're comfortable sharing, do you have any idea, like a range of what you guys spent start to finish to get that across the finish line?
Yeah, so I don't have the full numbers, but like I think the purchase price is somewhere in the 2.5 million range for 5 units. The units were probably about 2,500 square feet each. And then the build costs were north of $350 a square foot. That was a really expensive build.
Yeah.
At the same time, we were doing townhouses in Cambridge, and my cost came in, maybe $275 to $285 a square foot, somewhere in that range. So it's a little bit easier build there. We definitely had complexities. I had contaminated soil. I had helical piles. I had an existing house that Cambridge Historical wanted me to like save and add on to. So, but with all that, the finishes were a little simpler. Some of the site work was a little bit simpler at the end of the day. So that's why the costs were different in comparison to the two.
So I'm actually about to deal with the Cambridge Historical Society on a house that we're going to change some windows.
Yeah.
How was that with the house abutting the property that you were working on? Yeah.
So this site was a little weird. There was this like mid-century modern house, and then they just kind of added onto it. Like first it was like an office building, then they added like a warehouse onto it. So like historical didn't care about any of that, but they were really fixated on this like mid-century modern structure, which there isn't a lot of them in Cambridge, right? So they wanted us to really retain as much of that character as possible. Now, when it came to the windows, they're actually pretty lenient. We didn't have to go with anything like over the top. We ended up just doing Anderson windows that mimicked the look of what was original. And so in that respect, it wasn't too bad. But just the fact that they wanted us to save that building made it so much more challenging for us, because the first floor elevation of that structure was like 3 feet higher than the neighboring townhouse that I was going to add on to.
Yeah.
So because of that, my basement of my new construction townhouse next to it was going to be like 3 feet lower than the basement of this structure I'm saving. So now I'm like almost undermining that structure they wanted me to save. And so I had to do all this extra shoring and support work, helical piles underneath that. It was tricky. So, I respect what they're trying to do with saving the character of a lot of these buildings, but like what it does is it adds a ton of costs and it adds a lot of time to these projects. And I don't think that's really what's needed in this time where we're trying to like build more housing and get it out there quickly.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at cost, is there like a number you use, or what are you looking for? What are you watching out for? Like say somebody in the audience wants to bring a potential a development deal to you.
Yeah.
Like how would you assess whether or not it makes sense then?
Yeah, definitely.
Like what are red flags basically for you even?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few key things I look for. Soil conditions are one of them, So if we're working in an area where I think that we're going to need helical piles or some other sort of advanced, foundation system, like it's going to hurt the project numbers. Like one helical pile could cost $1,000 to $2,000 a pile, depending on how deep it is, and the other design, does it have to be fully grouted, things like that. So that's one aspect. Floodplain considerations, that gets overlooked a lot by people that are just like flipping projects. So that's one thing. ADA accessibility is another one. We try not to do elevators unless we have to. And, that really drives up costs. But, sometimes like if you can't figure out a way to get a first floor handicap accessible unit, then you're going to have to put in some type of lift. And you can get a variance from the Architectural Access Board. They kind of govern who, if you need to do certain things for accessibility, but they will allow you to do just this like 2-stop lift that will take the place of an elevator. So we've done that a number of times, but that's another aspect that we kind of try to avoid. And then the one that's really more difficult to tell is like if there's any site contamination. Usually if it's an existing residential site, you're probably fine. But if it's commercial, anything's possible. Like this one in Cambridge we finished like last year selling all the units. It's just in a neighborhood where there's a number of neighboring properties that discharged a lot of contamination over the years. So some of the soils we encountered was you had to be shipped off site, so it's something you really can't determine until you're doing some borings and some other soil testing. So usually we'll have that in as like a contingency that we can use to adjust the final price that we pay if we find some things that aren't favorable and are going to increased costs. So those are some aspects that I look at. I will say with the zoning change in Cambridge, I've seen a lot of projects come on the market and a lot presented to us that are, not permitted, but they're kind of schematic drawings showing like, this is as of right, you can build this. And it'll be like the 6-story building with 2 stairwells, an elevator, and like 31 beds and studios. And I just shake my head and I say, this is not viable. Sure, it's buildable, and I'm sure the units will sell. But if you think about like how many studios or 1 beds that have sold in Cambridge in the last year, I mean, it's probably not even close to the amount that we're putting into one building. And mind you, a lot of those units that have sold also come with a parking space. These sites, a lot of times, they don't have any parking that come with it. So I just see like poorly thought out schematic designs that people are trying to present and sell for projects that, one of the biggest things that's the issue now too is just the holding time, the time it takes to hold a project, not just through the construction phase, but through the sellout phase. So if you have a lot of the same units that you're selling, it's just going to take so much longer to sell because there's only so many buyers looking for that type of product. If you have a project that is diverse with maybe some 1 beds, some 2-bed flats or 1,000 square feet, a couple upper duplexes, you have some parking there, that really should sell pretty quickly because you're hitting kind of all the different parts of the market. Coming in with 31 beds and studios is really tough for the market to absorb. So, and with interest rates what they are, your construction costs, your holding costs are just going to be astronomical as you try to get through that sellout phase.
It's kind of like with investing generally, they say diversify. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a 30-unit building full of 1 bedrooms and studios, you're looking for students or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, in a vacuum, like, could you sell a studio for $1,100 a square foot in Cambridge? Yes. Are you going to do that 15 times within
a short
6
span of
months?
time?
No
Unlikely.
way. No way. It could take over a year to sell all those units. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. So yeah. And I've seen some projects that are, in Cambridge, Somerville that maybe it's 30 units and it's taken them like 2 years to sell every single unit. Another thing that we try to avoid because it really brings down the project is the affordable units, the inclusionary housing. Each municipality is different. Boston recently changed their policy. It used to be if you construct over 9 units, then you have to give 1 unit back as affordable. Now it is over 6 units. So your 7th unit has to be affordable. In Cambridge, when you have more than 10,000 square feet of gross residential area, then you have to have an affordable unit. So you're building that unit, that affordable unit at a loss. And the rest of the units have to kind of carry that. And on these smaller projects, it just doesn't work. And, on the bigger projects, certainly it could, maybe on a rental deal or a condo play. But again, if it's a condo play, it's going to take a long time to sell out, a large number of units.
So in Boston, you said so once you do 6 units, you got to do 1 affordable. Is it like every 6 or?
It's after you get to 7. So you can do a 6-unit project, no affordables. Once you get to that 7th unit, now it's affordable.
If you have like 15, do you have to do 2 affordable? Or is it trigger that 1?
So once you're up over 7, then it's 20. I think it's 18 or 20%. It's 18 or 20%. It depends on.
Oh, it used to be 12. It's 18 to 20.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, they increased it, and it depends. It's 18 if you do the sale price based on like an AMI, the annual median income of like a really low number.
Yep.
Right. But if you are like at 100% AMI, then you're going to have to do 20% affordable. So you have to do more units. And here was one other thing actually that I would look at with my due diligence going back is we actually are really starting to look at electrical feasibility because with the new energy codes in Massachusetts, especially in Boston, everything has to be all electric.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that when you're up to like 5 units, assuming the units aren't big, you can get away with no transformer. But once you go over that, you're gonna have to put in a transformer. And then the question is, well, can you do a pad mounted transformer, or do you have to put it in a vault? Because if you're putting it in a vault underground, that's like a $200K cost right there. Between the Eversource cost, site work cost, the vault itself, all that. That's big money. If you could put it at grade, those things have to be set back from your structure, your building, pretty good distance. So on a lot of these tight sites in Boston and other urban areas, like it doesn't always work. So, that's another big aspect now with the due diligence.
So, if you were to tell somebody, how do you start in this business? Yeah. What do you think the first steps they should take would be then?
Yeah. Well, I would say it's really tough to get into this industry right now. Like I'm sure like you remember this when I was coming in as a civil engineer and trying to dabble in it a little bit, like we could get a mortgage, no income verification. I would say I was a civil engineer. Yeah. They would say, oh, a civil engineer makes $100,000. Whereas I was actually making like $45,000 a year. And I got approved for like a 3-family that I bought for $650,000. Right. So times have changed dramatically. So a lot of cases you're looking at like private credit, hard money lending to get these deals financed. But I think step one is get your real estate license, like that's bare minimum. Just get some knowledge on the game, immerse yourself in real estate that way. Try to do some flips first, don't bite off more than you can chew, really start to understand like what goes into these projects. I know a house flip is much different than like new construction, but like at least it's a start so you can really understand construction costs. That was probably one of the biggest things, even to this day, like, because things are always changing with code and things like that. Like, do we have a great handle on construction costs? No. I mean, like I would say like an average multifamily in an urban setting should be around $300 a square foot to build. But like I mentioned, there's all these other like layers to it that can jack it up to well beyond that, So, I would say start with flipping, really dial in your numbers, make sure you know what it costs for painting and carpentry and roofing and siding, and then you can start to apply that to bigger projects, gut rehabs, and kind of move on from there. That's what I would recommend. And I've seen guys do it that way successfully. I've seen guys move from renovations, small little renovations, kitchens and baths, to, bigger renovations to new construction, and I think it's a natural evolution as you kind of, build your portfolio and your experience level up.
And we kind of jumped in right away. We did like an addition, like on our first one, and I think we came out ahead, but it was a pretty big.
Do an addition in Saugus.
Yeah, that was there was the area that was illegal space. Technically, it was an addition.
It wasn't an addition. We reclaimed space that was illegal and we made it legal.
Yeah.
They had finished off they closed off a part of the garage and did all the wiring and everything in there and never pulled permits for it. So we had to go back in there and just rip everything down, show the inspector all the work, and then close it back up.
It was wild. There was a 2-car garage and we go behind it and they left the garage doors there, but there was like a unit behind it.
Yeah, they had
a fake garage doors. Like they had them bolted to the thing still.
1 foot long space in between the garage door and the new wall that they built, and they just
that's nuts.
Yeah,
yeah. So we were like, we went into it thinking it was going to be a garage. And
it's
it was
one of the things that I've enjoyed about flipping is seeing all the stuff that when you go into these houses and you see all these weird things that people do and get away with. Man. I just saw somebody's house in Newton. They had 4 bathrooms all converging into one big Y thing and then just venting right into the attic. Just loose in the attic.
That's crazy. Wow. So the garage, it was a fake garage basically in that house. That's nuts.
But they bolted the garage doors to the wall, to the house. So like the door,
so you couldn't open them.
We couldn't open the doors. We're like, that's weird. And then
that
we
house
came
was
inside.
actually kind of crazy too, because it was kind of like a bomb shelter. So the first floor was made of like 6 inches of rebarred concrete.
Really?
Yeah. No idea why. There was only 1 floor. There was no need for all that support.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It was a single family home with like 6 inches of concrete.
Yeah.
Right. It seems a little excessive.
Yeah.
Right?
There was actually steel beams in it and everything.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Single family home.
Built to last.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. I mean, whoever bought that. I mean, whoever we sold that to, that thing's not going anywhere.
No.
That thing's built like a tank. Then we had we've seen some really weird things in these houses. Lots of weird stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And where are you guys mostly doing these flips, these deals? North Shore? Or?
Mostly in North Shore. We did one flip in the Cape.
One mistake that we're never doing again.
We're never doing that again. Both of us were like, no. Wait, I love the Cape, but I don't like driving because it's like literally spin the wheel when you go down 93. Yeah. Like I was like, it's like 2:00 in the morning. Why does it take me 4 hours to get home? You know, like I would have to go show the place and be like, oh, there goes my whole day. Right. You know what I mean? Just to go show the place. You know, so it was a very and
then I was managing the project, so like I would have to. If there was a day that I had to go to Hyannis for anything, it was just, that's it. That's my day. I'm going to go. I'm going to come back home and that's it because I'm never going to make it back in time to go anywhere else.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I built a vacation home down in Harwich, which is even further than Hyannis.
Yeah.
And it was like crazy long days. And I would like literally just do day trips like every single day. And it's about an hour and a half from my house. So it was a grind, but you know, it worked out well.
You still have that house then?
Yeah, we do. We're going to go down there tomorrow. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's
nice.
It's a good spot.
Well, it was all worth it.
It was worth it, totally. Yeah.
We've been very strict about our buy box since we started. That was the first one that went outside of our buy box, and we quickly learned why we had our buy box, and we stick to it.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. You got to have, you know, that's the other thing with these flips. The numbers are so tight. You got to know, like, what are you going to sell that thing for? That has to be like spot on. There's no margin for error.
Which Young has been kind of a freaking wizard because every single one that he hasn't been off by more than like 10K sometimes.
I don't think we've ever hit 10K off. Maybe like 5K.
Yeah.
That's good.
We've been spot on the numbers since the first one.
Yeah. We've never lost. Well, never lost on a deal yet.
That's great.
Luckily, you know,
that's great. I mean,
it's going to happen sooner or later, but we haven't lost one.
That's
yet.
Great.
Hyannis ended up being skinny.
That was skinny. Yeah. But there was a lot of things that, you know, there's a lot of reasons.
There was lessons.
Yeah, we learned a lot from that one.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
There's never a bad project. You learn. That's knowledge is power, right? So
I always got a place to crash down there for like. I think my wife and I were down there like 8 weekends worth of.
That's kind of nice.
That's kind of nice,
right?
actually. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, the place was staged and he was showing, so he would just go there for weekends and just hang out.
Just hang out in the weekends.
You might need a real bed, not one of those fake beds, just so you're comfortable at night.
We had real accommodations.
I actually sat through one of those things once. I didn't know that they, like, a long time ago, I had no idea that they just used boxes or whatever.
Air mattresses.
And I just went right through it in the middle of a showing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. I think you ever told me that.
Yeah, my mom was shopping for houses and I went with her and I just right through the freaking bed.
Oh, that's so funny. So okay. So if somebody's like, now say someone's done a couple flips, right? What do you think the next step would be? Say they've done like, I don't know, like 5-10 flips or something like that, you know, and they have a little bit under the belt now. What do you think where should they go look for deals? Where should they get more education? What do you think the next step would be?
Yeah. I think networking is definitely a good thing. You know, I think I was just at an event last week. It's great to talk with folks that are at all different levels of real estate investing, developing, and you can get some ideas from them and learn from them. So if you can find people like that, and you know, around here, there's a lot of those types of groups available. You know, they can really give you some insight on to those next steps, because I think a lot of folks will have the same story. They started doing small projects like that and then working up to bigger ones. So, you know, that's one thing I would recommend. You know, it definitely takes a lot of testicular fortitude to take that next jump. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
It's tough. You know, but I think the more you research it, the more you if you know your numbers well from what you're currently doing, and you really, you know, if you have let's say you're going from flipping into your first new construction single family house, like what are the aspects that are different? You know, the site work, the utilities, do you need septic? Is there sewer? How do you get water? Things like that. You know, understanding, are you near wetlands? Do you have to go through Conservation Commission to get a building permit approved? Things like that. So, you know, just do your homework, talk to the right people, talk to people who've been down that road before to help you learn a lot of these things. A couple months ago, I was meeting up with a colleague. He's a little bit younger than me. He kind of made that segue from renovations to new construction. and he was dealing with a tricky project where it was a single family house. He wanted to knock it down and build a nice big new construction single family. But the house that was there showed some signs of settlement, and he was right near a wetland. And I happened to show up the day that he was doing some test pits, and the guy's digging down, and he's hitting like, peat, which is like kind of really organic soil. It's not really structurally firm, and I said, look at the evidence you have with this building. Look at this test hole. You're going to probably need to get a geotech, to look at the soil, maybe do a boring, to see how deep do you have to go to hit some really solid substrate. Can you dig down to that and build it back up, or do you have to do helical piles, And so I had a little bit of that knowledge from those past projects that I had done, and I kind of shared it with him. So that's something he hadn't encountered before. He was also dealing with floodplain, conservation commission, high groundwater table. I said, if it was me, I definitely wouldn't do a basement. I would do a slab on grade. And then you have to really make a hard decision. Like, if you're trying to build a single family house in this location, you're trying to get to a certain price point. If it's a slab on grade house, is it really gonna, are the numbers gonna work? People want the basement.
Yeah.
And you could do a basement that might only have like a 5 or 6 foot tall ceiling height. Is that worth it to people? It's a little weird. So I think it's a gamble. And that really shaped his decision. He didn't do the new construction. I think he ended up doing a renovation and fortified the existing foundation on the house. So
you said you started out flipping. Do you find that predicting, and I know it's never the same for any project, there's no way to fully predict what it's going to cost to get something across the finish line, but do you find that it's easier to predict on a new build versus a renovation or a flip?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I did a flip or any type of renovation. We have better control over the numbers with the new construction. You really know what you're going to have to put into it, lumber wise and material wise. And you have, all these different trades that have to come in, not just your, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, but on a lot of the ones we're doing sprinkler, fire alarm, we're doing some sound attenuation. So we know all of this up front. We know exactly what we're, going to encounter with costs. And certainly there can be fluctuations in some material costs, especially during COVID. We had some shortages on appliances, on windows were coming in late.
Even paint.
When I built that place in Harwich, lumber was at its peak price. I put it on a cedar roof. Cedar was insanely expensive back then in 2021, 22. So, I would say all day new construction, I can really firm up the numbers better than a rehab. So and the other thing is too, if I haven't done a rehab in a long time, the last one I did was probably in my house, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago. But, for the guys that are doing that day in, day out, I'm sure they feel like they got those numbers locked in. At the same time though, I'm sure you get a project where you're like, all right, we're going to have to gut this one wall. Who knows what's behind it? Are we going to find wood rot? Are we going to have a rotted sill?
Every single time.
Yeah, we've seen that
all the time,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So the good thing on some of these projects, though, if it's a really small scope, it's not going to kill you too bad.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I would say try not to bite off too much, than you can chew.
So one thing I kind of wanted to kind of segue to is we've been using a lot of AI. Yeah. And it's amazing some of the stuff. It writes programs for you. Yeah. It puts together presentations for you. I've had it put together a graphics animation for me. I have friends of mine who work in the VC space and the private equity space. And also I have a guy who's a serial entrepreneur and all of them use AI every day, daily, right? To create what would take days, to kind of put together. So we have the certain ones that are pro accounts. Then, do you tell me a little bit about has AI impacted your business, or has it made your life easier, harder? What do you really use it for?
Yeah, so we're definitely using it more on the property management side.
Oh, really? Property management? Okay,
yeah, we are. With our leasing program, we're using a product called Lease Assist, which is it's a platform from Apartment Advisor, and Apartment Advisor was created by the folks at TripAdvisor. So their CEO, who also has Car Gurus, I guess, they created this Apartment Advisor platform that deals with maintenance and also leasing. So right now we're using the leasing program, Lease Assist, and what happens is we funnel all of our direct leads through this platform, this AI platform, and AI chatbot takes over once we get a query. So no matter what time of the day it is, or if it's a weekend or holiday, the chatbot gets right back in touch with that lead and starts a conversation with them, tries to basically set up a showing with that lead. And we have that platform is kind of tied into our property management software. So once the prospect selects a date that they want to look at the apartment, the bot will finalize that, let the existing tenants know that there's going to be a showing, certain date and time, lets the property manager know there's going to be a showing. We have to send someone from our office to, show the apartment at a certain date and time. And so far, so good. We've been booking a lot of showings. There's definitely some kinks we're working out with it, but it's working all right. The next kind of level to AI with property management, I see, and they already have kind of a platform for it, is on the maintenance side, kind of dealing with all the maintenance queries that we get. So, we're going to start to work on something probably Q3, Q4 this year, as some people like to talk in those terms. So we're going to explore that, but that's where we've been using AI so far. Using it for a lot of challenging issues that we've come up with in property management, a lot of difficult tenants that we have to kind of, refer back to Mass General Law or something like that. We've used it a little bit to kind of deal with them. For example, we had an insurance claim from a burst pipe this past winter. 2 units in a 4-unit building were impacted. One group of tenants was very cool. The other ones were upset. We cleaned it up and had the units restored within like a week.
That's fast.
It's very fast.
Yeah.
We were lucky. There was some damage that we didn't have to replace any flooring, but still there was a lot of drying. There was some painting. There was some baseboard replacement, things like that. So either way, it was really quick. And, we wanted to give them some sort of rent abatement, but, they were not happy. They wanted, probably half the rent off for the month. And we gave them a pro rata share of the rent for like 10 days plus just a portion of the unit that was affected. And, we referenced, Mass General Law and those standards for compensation and put it to bed pretty quickly. So we didn't have to go back and forth with them a ton, but, we used AI for a little bit of guidance on how to properly word that. So we weren't wasting too much time overthinking it, so it's definitely been helpful there. And yeah, we're looking at it for different aspects, looked at it a little bit for cold calling. I don't think it's quite there yet. I'm looking at it for our phone system. Right now we have a call center for our emergency calls. But I feel like we can just revamp our current dialing system during office hours. We just have like an IP phone system from Avaya. But I think I can combine that with emergency 24/365 call, access, and have an AI based system take over everything on that. So exploring that. But yeah, it's here. It's getting better every single day.
Do people know they're chatting with a bot when they set the appointments?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, so one of the gripes I have with the Lease Assist platform is it doesn't handle agent queries very well. Agents they're on top of their game and they know that they're not dealing with a human and they want to get a showing like stat,
yeah.
Right? So it hasn't worked well. And I told Lease Assist, I said, this is like, we have 2 avenues we're going down here. We have direct leads, we've got agents.
Yep.
And we need to be able to handle both, and they're both going to be handled differently. So they just couldn't get it up to snuff for agents. And right now we're in the throes of the leasing process, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got, dozens of units on the market right now. So we basically scrapped it in favor of showing time, and showing time works so much better. So, that's what I would say. But yeah, I think for the prospects, the direct leads, like, they may know that they're talking to a bot, but like, they don't really seem to care. Our clientele is probably like early 20s to like mid 30s, I would say. So like it's usually on a text that they're getting hit up by the bot, and they're just, they're just chatting, and they're like, yeah, I want to see it. Sure. Here, I'll see it this time, whatever, done, So I think it's working fairly good, but as good as it's working now, it's going to get a lot better.
Yeah. I'd love to see what it looks like on the maintenance side. It's the bane of my existence, dealing with maintenance.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. They ran through it a little bit with us, and I do know there's some decent sized apartment operators that are using it. So they seem, and they've set it up pretty nicely so that they have like troubleshooting questions and answers that it will give to, like, so say it's like my AC stopped running. And so the bot will like go through a routine, like, is the system blowing air? No, it's not blowing air. All right, well, why don't you check the breakers? Because maybe a breaker tripped and that's why it's not blowing air, right? So it'll like kind of work through it like that, which is nice. You could save yourself some money, not have to send a vendor out there.
Wonder if it'll ask if they're drunk. We had a tenant New Year's Eve, got home, hammered, set the heating to cold, set the system to cool, and then started blowing up our phones at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning saying that the AC broke and it's blowing cold air. Flipping out. So we had to send somebody there on the 1st of January to try to figure out what was going on. We thought it was broken. We're like, all right, it's blowing cold air. This is not good. We're going to send somebody out there. The HVAC tech shows up there, and he calls me and FaceTimes me. He's like, fixed. He had a deadpan look on his face. And he's like, it's fixed. I'm going home.
That's crazy.
She was wasted.
Yeah.
Apparently. So, I know, like, other than development work, you've actually, from our discussion before, you were actually reaching out in other real estate related businesses. You want to kind of go over some of the other things that you're expanding into?
Yeah. So, other than development, we have, a brokerage business, which is really kind of supporting our property management business. Sure, we've done some sales deals here and there, but that's really not a lot of what we do. We do a lot on the leasing side, especially in Southie, Cambridge, a little bit in Somerville, East Boston, and maybe Austin, Brighton a little bit. So, and then on the property management side, it's obviously a big part of our business and cash flow right now. So, we manage about 650 units right now, mix of condo associations, rental units, rental buildings, apartment buildings. And it's especially on the HOA side, we kind of specialize on the smaller HOAs, which is a little bit of a niche,
it's interesting. Nobody does those.
I know.
Yeah, most people they only want the big buildings.
Yeah. We have a couple, but not like super big. Nothing over 100 units or anything like that. But so it's been pretty good. And we fortunately have some really great clients, and our team works really hard keeping clients and tenants happy, which is tough because it's really, you're serving kind of two different masters, but we walk the line pretty well. And so we're always looking to add, more units. We're doing various marketing campaigns to add units that way. So it's been good. We're also, the residential development has been a little bit slow, but we're kind of using our development knowledge to do some utility scale solar work. So basically what that entails is finding land that we can do ground mounted solar. The state basically pays for every kilowatt produced, and it's almost like a rental project in a lot of ways, because in many of these instances we're leasing the land and we're getting paid rent, which is for the energy produced from the state, and it's a guaranteed contract for 20 years.
So almost like rental arbitrage. So you're doing a land lease, and then you're putting a structure on the land, and then your revenue comes from the sun.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Sun's not going to stop shining.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and it's. But I will say it's really complex, and it's not about getting the solar panels and whatnot built. That's like
I bet there's a bunch of red tape.
That's the easy part. The hard part is navigating the permitting with Eversource or National Grid. There's a lot of aspects to that. The tax credits that are available, they're really tricky. The revenue streams can go up or down depending on different types of sites you're working on. You get paid more when you're working on like a landfill or a brownfield site.
That makes sense. That's why they're always on them.
Yeah, exactly. If you go to some of these transfer stations out of town, you'll see like solar panels on them, and that's the state really wants to see properties like that utilized in some reasonable fashion. So that's why they give you a little bit extra revenue for sites like that. But
it's a pretty cool way to use landfills.
Yeah, exactly. So because those landfills are capped. They don't want anything, disturbing the cap on it. These solar panels are just going to stay there for decades.
So, are you selling the power to the utility company or the state?
It goes back to the grid.
Okay.
We're selling basically to the power company.
Okay.
And so the power company will pay us a portion of the revenue, and then the rest of the revenue comes from the state.
Oh, interesting. So it's being
the state's like subsidizing
it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And in fact, if you look at your Eversource bill, you're going to see all the subsidies right there. Everyone kind of pays for it.
Yeah, there's like 8 of them in there.
Yeah,
there's a bunch of them. Yeah.
Net metering, there's EV charging, there's everything.
So, if anybody here wanted to reach out to you, what's the best method to reach out to you then?
Yeah, I mean, you can see us on Instagram. sunpropertygroup.com is our website, so you can find us there. Our email is there, and or you can give us a call. All the information's on our website or on Instagram.
Awesome. So thank you for joining us tonight. Or actually, it could be any time really right now. They're watching this really. But for more information, follow us on YouTube, Instagram, on Facebook.
All the social medias.
Also, you also can go ahead and give us your opinion. Let us know what you think about the show at equitybus.com. Have a great night.